Let's read. Let's read. Ooh, observance for the great 16th century Japanese tea master Takino Soo once passed by a house and noticed a young man watering flowers near his front gate. Two things caught Shuo's attention. First, the grateful. First, the grateful. First, the graceful way the man performed his task, and second, the stunningly beautiful rose of Sharon blossoms that bloomed in the garden. He stopped and introduced himself to the man, whose name was Sen no Ryuki. So wanted to stay, but he had a prior engagement, but had to hurry up before he left. However, Ryuki invited him to take tea with him the following morning. Shuo happily accepted. When Shuo opened the garden gate the next day, he was horrified to see that not a single flower remained. More than anything else, he had come to see the rose of Sharon blossom that he had not had the time to appreciate the day before. Now, disappointed, he started to leave, but at the gate, he stopped himself and decided to enter Sen no Ryuki's tea room. Immediately inside, he stopped in his tracks and gazed in astonishment before him. A vase hung from the ceiling, and in the vase stood a single rose of Sharon blossom, the most beautiful in the garden. Somehow, Sen no Ryuki had read his guest's thoughts, and with this one eloquent gesture, had demonstrated that this day guest and host would be in perfect harmony. Sen no Ryuki went on to become the most famous tea master of all, and his trademark was this uncanny ability to harmonize himself with his guests' thoughts and to think one step ahead, encanting them by adapting to their taste. One day, Ryuki was invited to tea by Yamashika Hechiguan, and Mirror of the Sea, and Yamashina Hachigawa, an admirer of the tea ceremony, but also a man with a vivid sense of humor. When Ryuki arrived at Hichiguan's home, he found the garden gate shut, so he opened it to look for the host. On the other side of the gate, he saw that someone had first dug a dish, then carefully covered it over with canvas and earth. Realizing that Hichiguan had planned a practical joke, he obligingly walked right into the dish, muddying his clothes in the process. Apparently horrified, Ichiguan came running out and hurried Ryuki to a bath that for some inexplicable reason stood already prepared. After bathing, Ryuki joined Ichiguan in the tea ceremony, which both enjoyed immensely, sharing a laugh about the accident. Later, Sen no Ryuki explained to a friend that he had heard about Ichiguan's practical joke beforehand, but since it should always be one's aim to conform to the wishes of one's host, I fell into the hole knowingly and thus assured the success of the meeting. Tea is by no means more obscureness, but there is no tea where the host and guest are not in harmony with one another. Ichigon's vision of the dignified Sen no Ryuki at the bottom of the dish had pleased him endlessly, but Ryuki had gained a pleasure of his own in complying with his host's wish and watching him amuse himself in this way. Interpretation. Sen no Ryuki was no magician or seer. He was those around him acutely plumbing the subtle gesture that revealed a hidden desire, then producing that desire's image. Although Shuo never spoke of being enchanted by the rose of Sharon blossoms, Ryuki read it in his eyes. If mirroring a person's desires meant falling into a ditch, so be it. Ryuki's power resided in his skillful use of the Cordea's mirror, which gave him the appearance of an unusual ability to see into other people. Learn to manipulate the Cordea's mirror, for it will bring you great power. Study people's eyes, follow their gestures, surer barometers of pain and pleasures than any spoken word. Notice and remember the details, the clothing, the choice of friends, the daily habits, the toss out remarks, the reveal hidden and rarely indulged desires. Soak it all in, find out what lies under the surface, then make yourself the mirror of their unspoken selves. That is the key to his power. The other person has not asked for your consideration, has not mentioned his pleasure in the rose of Sharon, and when you reflect it back to him, his pleasure is heightened because it's unmasked for Remember, the word less communication, the indirect complement, contains the most power. No one can resist the enchantment of the courteous mirror. Observance 7. Yellow Kid Whale con artist extraordinaire used the deceiver's mirror in his most brilliant cons. Most audacious of all of us is a recreation of a bank in Municia, Indiana, when Whale read one day that the merchant's bank in Municia had moved. He saw an opportunity he could not pass up. Whale rented out the original merchant building, which still contained bank furniture completed with tailor windows. He bought money bags, stenciled, stenciled a bank's invented name on them, filled them with steel washers, and arrayed them impressively behind the teller's window, along with bundles of boodle real bills hiding newspaper cut to size for his bank staff and customers, well-hardy gamblers, bookiers, girls from local body houses, and other assorted confederates. He even had a local thug pose as a bank clerk, claiming to be the broker for a certificate investment the bank was offering. Whale would fish the waters and hook the proper wealthy suckers. He would bring these men to the bank and ask to see the president. An officer of the bank would tell them that they had to wait, which only heightened the realism of the con. One always has to wait to see the bank president, and as they waited, the bank would bustle with bank-like activity as call girls and bookies in disguise floated in and out, making deposits and withdrawals and tipping their hats to the phony bank clique. Lulled by this perfect copy of reality, the sucker would deposit $50,000 into the fake bank without a worry in the world. Over the years, Whale did the same thing with a deserted yacht club, an abandoned brokerage office, a relocated real estate office, and a completely realistic gambling club. Interpretation: the mirroring of reality offers immense deceptive powers. The right uniform, the perfect accent, the proper props. The deception cannot be deciphered because it's invest in a simulation of reality. People have an intensive desire and need to believe, and their first instinct is to trust a well-constructed facade to mistake it for reality. After all, we cannot go around doubting the reality of everything we see. That would be too exhausting. We habitually accept appearances, and this is a graduality you can use. In this particular game, is the first moment that counts the most. If your suckers suspicious are not raised by their first glance at the mirror's reflection, they will stay suppressed. Once they enter your hall of mirrors, they will be unable to distinguish the real from the fake, and it will become easier and easier to deceive them. Remember, study the world's surfaces and learn to mirror them in your habits, your manner, your clothes. Like a carnivorous plant to unsuspecting insects, you'll look like all the other plants in the field. Authority: the task of a military operation is to accord deceptively with the intentions of the enemy, get to what they want first, subtly anticipate them, maintain discipline, and adapt to the enemy. Thus, at first you are like a maiden, so the enemy opens his door. Then you are like a rabbit on the loose, so the enemy cannot keep you out. Sun Tzu, 4th century BC. Image: the shield of Perseus. It is polished into a reflecting mirror. Medusa cannot see you, only her own hideousness reflected back at her. Behind such a mirror, you can deceive, mock, and infuriate. With one blow, you sever Medusa's unsuspecting head. A warning: beware of mirrored situations. Mirrors contains great power but also dangerous traits, including the mirrored situation, a situation that seems to reflect or closely resembles a previous one, mostly in style and surface appearances. You can often back into such a situation without fully understanding it, while those around you are understand it quite well and compare it and you to whatever happened before. Most often you suffer by the comparison, seeming either weaker than the previous occupant of your position or else tainted by any unpleasant associations that person has left behind. In 1864, the composer Richard Wagner moved to Munich at the behest of Ludwig II, known variously as the Swan King or the Mad King of the Bavaria. Ludwig was Wagner's biggest fan and most generous patron. The strength of his support turned Wagner's head. Once established in Munich under the king's protection, he would be able to see and do whatever he wanted. Wagner moved into a lavish house which the king eventually bought for him. The house was but a stone's throw from the former home of Lola Montes, the notorious courtesan who had plunged Ludwig II's grandfather into a crisis that had forced him to abdicate. Warned that he could be infected by this association, Wagner only scoffed. "I am no Lola Montes," he said. Soon enough, however, the citizens of Munich began to resent the favors and money showered on Wagner and dubbed him the second Lola or Lolotte. He unconsciously began to tread in Lola's footsteps, spending money extravagantly, meddling in matters beyond music, even dabbling in politics and advising the king on cabinet appointments. Meanwhile, Ludwig's affection for Wagner seemed intense and undignified for a king, just like his grandfather's love for Lola Montes. Eventually, Ludwig's ministers wrote him a letter. "Your Majesty now stands at a fateful parting of the ways. You have to choose between the love and respect of your faithful people and the friendship of Richard Wagner." In December of 1865, Ludwig politely asked his friend to leave and never return. Wagner had inadvertently placed himself in Lola Montes' reflection. Once there, everything he did reminded the stolid Bavarians of the dread woman, and there was nothing he could do about it. With such association effects like the plague in a mirrored situation, you have little or no control over the reflections and recollections that will be connected to you, and any situation beyond your control is dangerous. Even if the person or event has positive associations, you will suffer from not being able to live up to them, since the past generally appears greater than the present. If you ever notice people associating you with some past event or person, do everything you can to separate yourself from that memory and to shatter the reflection. Okay. So that's it, guys. Bye.